Today's topic is going to be boosting immune health and well, boosting immunity altogether. Basically, spring is coming and things are happening, and people are getting slightly run down because they want to rush outside and doing many things. And then one thing you get hot, another minute you are cold, and everything is just in high speed. So, can you dig into explaining why is there such an seasonal immunity shift between winter, spring, summer, autumn? What's actually happening there? Uh, and what are people missing out? Because a lot of people will get ill and will get run down. What can they do to prevent this?
Yeah, so it basically comes back to the thymus, right? So the thymus is a small organ right in here that controls thymosin 1 and thymosin 2, which are proteins that are going to be coding your immune system. Some of the proteins, not all of it, but some of the proteins that code your immune system. And the thing that actually is going to govern that is actual sunlight and temperature. Those are the two things. And the reason why it's sunlight and temperature is because your skin has a major component of your immune system. It has all your B cells, or the majority of them there. And your guts have the majority of your T cells in something called the GOLT. Now, sunlight can penetrate all of those, right? And as winter turns to spring and starts to turn into summer, the thing that starts to change is the temperature outside and the amount of UV light coming through the sky, right? So in order for your body to catch on to, hey, it is now going from winter to spring, your body needs to be able to tell that there's plenty of UV light interacting in the environment, because that's what's coming, right? Winter time is a time where UV light is absent. There's plenty of red light from the sun, but not very much UV light. Sometimes in some places it'll be almost zero. And then when spring comes, things start to thaw out. You'll have allergens that get released and things of that nature, but your body is not really prepared for that if your skin is never involved with gathering UV light. Now, a lot of people think that just going outside in the mornings, because we talk about that a lot, is the thing that does that. It's not. The morning outside time is to set the start of the day for every day. It's not a seasonal indicator. The middle part of the day is the seasonal indicator, because no matter where you live on the planet, as spring comes, the middle part of the day is the first time, or the first part of the day that starts to see UV light, right? So right now I'm in Wyoming, and since the 3 weeks ago, the middle part of the day now here gives me UV light, which is why I'm outside right now getting actual UV light on my body, UVA and UVB. But earlier in January, even on a sunny day, there was very little UV light. So even in the middle of the day, my body wouldn't get any UV light stimulation. The problem is most people work and live indoors. So they are permanently running on winter time immune system. And then you go outside in the spring or outside in the fall time when it's getting cold, and that disruption of temperature in the outside environment is causing humidity to change, it's causing bacteria growth to change and things of that nature. You're not really prepared for those things because your body still thinks that it's dead of winter, where things like that don't actually grow. So you're not really prepared for allergens. You're not really prepared for things that will start to grow in a UV environment, because your body doesn't understand that there's UV out at this time of day. So one of the crucial things that I start to teach people about springtime is this is the time where you actively get outside for the middle part of the day for 20 minutes minimum, right? Get a lot of skin involved. More is better at this time of the day, because this is also where you can start to train the skin to react positively to strong sunlight that's going to be coming in the summer. This is the perfect time to actually do something like building something called your solar callus. In other words, your skin's resiliency to be damaged by UV light, because the UV light right now is very weak. You're getting a dose of it. Like, for example, for me to get pink outside right now, I'd have to be outside the whole day, and I probably still wouldn't get pink because the UV light's not that strong. Whereas in a month from now, I could probably get pink in about an hour. And then in the summertime, I might get pink in 30 minutes. But because I'm starting right now, I will never actually hit that threshold even in the summertime, because my body is creating all of the right systems at the skin level, all the right, turning carotenoids into the right molecules at the skin. It's turning DHA, right, because DHA interacts with UV light to be turned into docosanoids that are protected to the skin and other cell membranes. It's turning all of those actively, and my risk is very low because the UV light is not very powerful right now. So by the time the UV light does get powerful, you're going to be somebody that can spend almost all day outside if you can on a weekend, and make up for days when you're inside, right? Whereas if you never train up your skin, you never make your skin have a good solar callus, you can't actually execute on taking advantage of the weekends of getting extra sunlight because you'll just burn. Does that make sense?
Anything that people who live in not so great environmental places do about it? Let's say UK, great example, because it's always raining and it's always dark. So
Yeah.
is there anything that maybe some red light therapy or something middays that they can throw in? Maybe
I would say in that particular context, in that particular context, I would actually do a low grade UVA light therapy in the springtime to prepare you for summertime, because even in the UK you're going to get sunlight in the summer, but if you've never built up the solar callus, you're not really going to be able to take advantage of it, right? Now, because being in the UK also means that anything that you can do to up your omega-3 index, this includes eating the fish and possibly even supplementing in the true form of, I'm eating the fish that has all the right cofactors and I'm supplementing on top of that, not substituting, right? Substituting doesn't ever work. So I would say supplementing some DHA for people that live in that environment would be great. And I would even go as far as the winter time is when you want to actually change your training a little bit and make it more aerobic in nature, more fitness related, so that you improve oxygen tensions and oxygen carrying capacity. Because one of the key things to make melanin, right, that's part of what a solar callus is melanin. You need great oxygen carrying capacity, because melanin takes phenylalanine and tyrosine with the action of UV light to create alpha MSH, but only if you have great oxygen tensions in your tissues. So in other words, if you're an unfit individual, you can also have a hard time building a solar callus because oxygen tensions are low in all your cells. You're not delivering a lot of oxygen. So that means even when UV light hits these amino acids in the mitochondria is not going to make as much alpha MSH and as much melanin as it could if you have high oxygen tensions. Think of it like oxygen is one of the fuels, the fuels that is required, one of the 3 substrates that's required to make melanin and a correct solar callus. So we alluded to this in the past, but this is probably a good time to kind of think about that. By springtime, you should have been doing your aerobic work, your calisthenics work, any of your baseline athletic stuff that makes you a good athlete. That should have been prioritized in the winter and not so much glycolytic work. Now you can, I'm not saying you can't do those, but those start to take priority in terms of longevity and preparing yourself for the next season to come. Because now that there's more UV light and more red light coming because the days are longer, now training like muscle building and stuff like that can now start to come up to the front because your oxygen carrying capacity is nice and high, and you're getting more UV light and more infrared, which will support the recovery of muscles that get worked, right? That's in red light therapy. This would be an adjunct. Red light therapy could help to even dose that even higher. This is known in red light therapy that it helps with ATP production in the muscle membranes or in the mitochondria for muscle tissue itself, and it upregulates the recovery process for tendons, ligaments, and things of that nature. So now that the days are getting longer, now you can go more towards damaging muscle tissues, damaging tendons and ligaments, lifting heavy, if you want to call it that, whatever that means to you as far as your particular training, because now you can actually recover from it passively just by going outside.
So what you described just now is going completely against the grain of bodybuilding, kind of, well, I can't say bodybuilding, it's more of a, like an educated people community where go, hey, winter, let's bulk because nobody's going to see us. Let's put as much weight as we want and this and that, which me and you, we have kind of gone against that all the time. To me, winter is the best time to do the boring stuff because nobody sees me. I don't need to look good.
Correct.
I don't
Yeah,
need to look
that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
by the time summer comes, I want to be able to hang out with my friends and do whatever the hell I want, instead of having 6-8 weeks to work myself to the point where I can move again. So when you describe all this, what about nutrition? Is there anything that can increase immune health, immune system strengths that people can do in the winter approaching spring?
Yep, this is the perfect time. So depending on where you live, the variation of how far you take this will dictate how far you are from the equator. But let's just say hypothetically you're at 40 degrees latitude or higher, which is the UK and a lot of the United States and Canada, right? So that means that in the winter you should have been pretty much carnivore and ketotic. It doesn't mean zero vegetables or zero carbs. It just means those should have been the primary sources of your calorie intake. They're going to blunt hunger easier. They're going to make it so that you don't bloat and have digestive problems when you're not getting a lot of sunlight and things of that nature. And then in the fall and in the spring, where the days are a little bit longer, that's where I would focus in on bringing in a lot more nutrient dense antioxidant type foods. That's every single vegetable that you can think of. That's every single fruit or berry that you can think of, other than tropical fruits, right? Mangoes, bananas. I probably wouldn't introduce those yet, but things like berries are great. They have very low calories, very little carbohydrates, and lots of antioxidants. Veggies, great. They have a lot of antioxidants. They have a lot of low calories. You don't want starchy carbohydrates quite yet, because they'll impact how you digest things. And remember what I said about one of the key components of your immune system is your T cells in the gut, right by your gut. So you don't want to disturb those quite yet at this time of the year, but you do want to introduce things that start bringing in things like antioxidants and high amounts of minerals and vitamins, which the two big heavy hitters from the plant side of things are veggies and berries. And then from the food side of things, nothing really changes. We always want to hit high quality meats coming from real animals, right? And at the top of that list, coming from wintertime, is seafood, right? Just below that is any red meat source. And then just below that is finally pork. And then below that would be chicken in terms of quality of nutrition, right? And then as the summer comes, those can actually step down as far as how much of those you eat, unless you enjoy eating those. As long as you're hitting the right amount of protein for your body weight, the choices of those start to lose their priority if you are getting a lot of sunlight or getting outside frequently. Now, if you're somebody who works indoors, that's where this kind of is like, well, you kind of always have to have a baseline level of DHA or seafood coming in, because you're putting downward pressure on that system when you work indoors, because everywhere that you work indoors, there's Wi-Fi routers, there's laptops, there are things that are causing degradation of the DHA system and the selenium and the iodine in the seafood. So depending on your exact job, the protein source may or may not vary as much, but this is a perfect time to add in the vegetable and fruit sources of low calories, high amounts of nutrition.
So do I hear it right that you're recommending the locally grown stuff because, okay, your berries...
That would be the best. Yeah, that would be the best.
And also, what about the difference between farm and wild raised fish or anything like that?
So
there be
the best would be wild caught, but in the United States, that's pretty easy. I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the United States, any canned seafood cannot be farmed. It has to be wild caught, which makes it cheaper. The only drawback to that is that it's already canned and already cooked. So you're not going to make it taste super great, right? Now, in terms of, hey, I want to have a fillet, right? I want to have a nice salmon fillet or something like that. Doesn't matter if it comes from the farm or from a wild caught source. I honestly am of the opinion that it probably isn't going to matter unless it becomes something that you eat every single day, right?
I'm pretty sure I've seen canned chicken in the US.
There is canned chicken. Yes, there is canned chicken. Yes, but that's different. That's not a seafood. So that is farm raised. But seafood in the US cannot be any fish that's canned has to be wild caught in the US. And it says it right on the can. It'll say wild caught right on the can. But as far as the actual fillets of fish and stuff like that, if you can afford it, wild caught is going to be better. But isn't really going to matter that much. What I do notice the biggest difference between farm raised and wild caught is the amount of calories, because they feed those fish different food. They're going to have a lot more fat on them. They're going to have a lot more calories, right? So if you're trying to diet, I actually tend to push towards wild caught items because they're significantly leaner. That also goes for farm raised animals versus slaughterhouse animals, right? Because they are fed differently right at the end stage, right before they kill them. The grass-fed animal is going to be leaner. It's always going to be leaner, and that's always helpful if you're dieting. So there's different considerations that are not necessarily health related. They're more of, are you dieting or not type of scenario.
So you recovered food, you recovered a little bit about some immune responses. Can you dig into daily habits? So what lifestyle adjustments should be done on a deeper level? Because we know that in the winters there is little sun exposure, so your blood panel will look completely different in winters than in summer, unless you have same exact lifestyle habits in winter and in summer. So what can be changed and what should be changed to improve your overall health in winter, bring it into spring, into summer?
Yeah, so in the winter, your LDL cholesterol right now, we'll just call it bad cholesterol because that's how people know it. It's not bad. It's not even cholesterol. It's a lipid protein, right? It's transporting cholesterol. But either way, LDL is what every single doctor is going to, try to get you to get a statin or try to reduce it or tell you, hey, you need to do better about this. Well, guess what? In the winter, if you live somewhere where it does become winter and the sun goes away or significantly reduces, your LDL cholesterol goes up. It should go up. Why is it going up? Because it's preparing you for springtime. It's being proactive, right? Because LDL cholesterol, like we talked about in our sex hormones and vitamin D stuff that we talked about, LDL cholesterol is what's getting sulfated to be turned into these other molecules that are going to do work for you. So your body understands, hey, there's no sunlight. So we need to increase LDL because eventually there will be sunlight, and we need to top off all of our tanks of sex hormones, all of our tanks of vitamin D, all of our tanks of neurotransmitters. A lot of these come from amino acids and sulfated cholesterol, and the main cholesterol that's going to be sulfated when you interact with the sun is going to be LDL. Now, having said that, lifestyle habits. The best habit that I can tell somebody to do is literally just go outside in the middle part of the day. Everybody has a lunch break, or at least you should have a lunch break. The only people this doesn't apply to is people that work shift work, people that work night shift. That's a different group of animals, and they are going to disproportionately have way higher LDLs than everybody else because they live essentially a winter life all the time because they never get sunlight. So their body's always trying to pump out more and more LDL because it's eventually wanting them to interact with sunlight to create things that it needs to be created. But barring those people, most people have a lunch break. The easiest hack, I'm not joking, just go outside, walk for 10 minutes with as much skin exposed as possible. That's something that a lot of people don't understand is in order to sulfate cholesterol, to turn it into vitamin D, for example, or pregnenolone and DHEA and your other sex hormones, it needs to be interacted with by two forms of light, UVA for the sex hormones and UVB for the vitamin D. UVA controls some of the immune system at the gut, and UVB controls some of the immune system at the skin. Because they're different wavelengths, they penetrate differently. So UVA penetrates deeper. That's why it is responsible for tuning the gut microbiome and tuning the gut immune responses. And UVB penetrates higher wavelengths, bigger frequency, so it has more power, but it penetrates less. It can only penetrate about 3 or 4 millimeters into the body, so it's responsible for tuning the skin's immune system, the B cells, right? So the biggest hack is the middle part of the day from about 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. in most parts of the country right now, have both UVA and UVB in that middle part of the day. So that's the perfect time to make it a habit to just go outside with as much skin exposed, because more skin means more action. In the 20 minutes that I've been talking out here, I've probably made a significant amount of vitamin D, even though the sun is quite weak right now, but it still has UVB in it. So I'm making vitamin D right now. I'm tuning my immune system. In 20 minutes, that's all it really takes, especially because I have my shirt off. I have a lot of area exposed doing that work. If I had my shirt on, just as reference, right? Like I'm in this picture right now, in picture frame. I have my whole torso exposed. I'm getting probably 30 to 40% of my skin on my body involved in this process. If I put my shirt on right now, immediately I cut down to only about 5 to 7% of my skin on my body can now make vitamin D and tune my immune system and create sex hormones. You're going to have to be outside all day if this is the amount of skin that's involved, right? Because it's very little. Whereas if you're trying to get the most out of a 20-minute session, right? This is, somebody that works indoors, somebody that's going to be inside, somebody that works an office job. You only can probably spend about 20 minutes on your lunch break outside. That's where you need to be able to take off your shirt. You need to be able to have some workout clothing underneath or something like that. Little hacks like that go a long way. Anytime that you can get more skin involved, get more area of your skin involved, it dramatically accelerates how useful 20 minutes of time is or 15 minutes of your time is. So that's also a very good hack, and it needs to be done in the middle part of the day. The morning just sets the circadian rhythm of acute things that will happen that day, like neurotransmitters. Those are not they're not long form, long timeline modulators of your body. Hormones like vitamin D and your sex hormones are long-term modulators of your immune system in your body. Those are done in the middle part of the day.
So what about mental health and immunity? Because we know we have seasonal
seasonal affective disorder. So actually there's actually quite a few studies now elucidating this exact thing with people with psychosis, people with bipolar disorders, people with seasonal affective disorders. The main thing that they see is this, okay? People with those types of disorders need incredibly bright days and incredibly dark nights. For some of these disorders, the night is more important, having darkness at night, like schizophrenia, for example. If you have somebody that's schizophrenic and gets a lot of daylight, but they also get really bright lights at night, their schizophrenia doesn't get much better. But if they have really bright days and really dark nights, their schizophrenia gets better. People with bipolar disorder, people with other mental diseases like that, or mental disorders like that, those benefit just not solely, but they get a large benefit from a bright day, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like the morning is great for setting the tone of the day, of your neurotransmitters and your cortisol response. But if you spend most of the time indoors, you're not getting that bright daylight response at the brain level. So at the pituitary gland and at the hypothalamus. So your body starts to get disrupted as far as like when should it be active and really gung-ho and when shouldn't it. So that's where the middle part of the day of just going for a walk outside for 10 or 15 minutes plays huge roles with everything that I said before as far as getting a lot of skin involved, but not having sunglasses on so that your brain can actively get a lot of really bright light into the brain through your RPE, your retinal tract that goes directly to your brain from your eye. That is crucial for modulating emotions and mental disorders, right? So you can start this really, really early in the season, even as early as last month, because there will be days, because every day gets longer, right? Because the winter solstice was December 22nd. From that point forward, every single day gets longer and longer. So you have more and more opportunity where the clouds might break and you can open a window or roll down a window or just step outside the building and get a lot of bright light in your face. And that will start to immediately reverse things like seasonal affective disorder and things of that nature.
Does this work also when it's cloudy and rainy?
Yes, absolutely. The reason why it works is because if you get a lux meter, which is just a meter that measures light, if you measure the brightest indoor light, think of the light aisle in Home Depot, right? Like if you walked into the light aisle in Home Depot, all the lights are on, right? And you put the lux meter in there, it's going to say probably around 500 to 700 lux, right? That's the brightness level. If you walk outside in a cloudy day, I don't care where you're at. You can even be in the UK. On a cloudy day in the UK, even if it's raining, the lux will be above 3,000, right? So the brightness level is easily 5 to 10 times higher than the brightest indoor lighting that you can think of. That is incredibly important to understand. Just because you have bright lights inside, it's not even bright enough to cause a brain response. Because what people also don't understand about the brain is when you wake up from sleep, it is the least sensitive to light. In other words, that's why people can wake up from their sleep, and once you're awake, you can turn on all the lights and you really don't feel any weirdness, right? You actually need a lot of light earlier in the day to activate these systems. That's why it's crucially important that around the middle part of the day, which is going to be the brightest part of the day anyway, is when you want to walk outside and get that signal process, especially for mental disorders and things of that nature.
So it's important to get out not only for correct hormonal responses, but it's also kind of mental health and these kind of things, which we often overlook completely, and we link to many other things than just medicate our way out of this stuff.
Yes.
So, and this kind of brings me to this stuff of medication, what to do with somebody who's been told, hey, you got high cholesterol, you need to take statins, you need to do this, you need to do that. Is there anything that they can do blood testing wise that they can access and then adjust their approach and then go back to doctors, not necessarily go off medication?
Yeah. So for example, here's a good one, specifically with the statins, right? There is no statin that raises HDL cholesterol, right? They only will lower LDL cholesterol, right? So one of the things that I tell people, I'm like, if you're on a statin and you have sex hormone problems, it's worth exploring what I'm talking about, so that if your sex hormones start to come up, right, then we know we're on the right track, right? Because those sex hormones got affected by the statin because it lowered your LDL. And if we make any of your LDL that is still in your blood be able to be turned into sex hormones and vitamin D, we'll see those in your blood panel. And then it's much easier to be like, okay, well, why don't we cut your statin down? Or more than likely, this is very common, most people are like 2 statins, sometimes 3 statins. And so then we go, well, let's go from 3 to 1, right? Or let's go from 2 to 1. And then slowly start seeing how you feel and so forth. And then the other thing that will start to happen if they are executing on this, because the lifestyle can be executed with drugs in place or medications in place, right? You just got to know where to look to see if you're making improvements. One of the other things that you'll want to look is your HDL cholesterol. There is no statin that can increase your HDL cholesterol more than 1 or 2 points. And sunlight, especially if you got a lot of DHA in your system, that will bring up your HDL by 10 or 15 points. The biggest increase I've seen is 20 points, right? So if that happens, right, you look at your LDL cholesterol, your cholesterol panel, and you're still taking a statin, but all of a sudden your HDL goes sky high, like 20 points, the doctor's going to go, well, that's fantastic. What did you do? And then you can be like, well, I increased sunlight. So then you can go, okay, if I increase sunlight, I get better sex hormones, I get better vitamin D, and I get better HDL. It kind of sounds like I probably should just wean off of the statin and see what happens to my LDL cholesterol while I'm doing all these things. It's much easier to approach it like that if you know the bits and pieces to look for that are changing, that are not related to that LDL molecule that you're taking the medication for.
How long would it take to actually see the changes in blood test?
Well, it varies on a few things, so I'll talk about what the variation is. Number one is going to be your skin type, right? If you're really light-skinned, European descent, you can actually see changes fairly quickly, within like 8 weeks. If you're darker skinned, it can take longer because you need more sun to actually execute on that, right? So that's one of the main things. Other thing is literally, are you able to get a lot of skin involved? Like me, right? Like I don't have a problem taking my shirt off wherever the hell I'm at, right? You might not have the same luxury, right? So then it becomes how much skin is involved, right? If there's very little skin involved, like I mentioned, with that shirt example, then that means by default, in order to make that happen, you need way more time outside. So those are really the two biggest variables. How much actual skin is being involved with the time outside, and what is the skin, right? Are you black? Are you Hispanic? Are you white? Those will have different variations on how much time is needed. And just off the cuff, it goes about like this. If you're white, you need right around 1 hour per day total of sunlight. So something like 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, and then about 30 minutes in that middle part of the day to execute well. If you're darker skinned like me, you pretty much have to double that time frame. You need about 2 hours, right? And then if you're even darker than I am, that can go all the way up to somewhere around 4 to 5 hours if you're black, right? So you would need like an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, and about 3 hours in the middle of the day. That is the unfortunate truth of how the biology works because of the mitochondria. Where are they attuned to be capable of gathering sunlight, right? Like if you're, from Ethiopia and you have really, really dark skin, your biology has been set up to live on the equator at 8,000 feet, which means you are somebody who's supposed to get a crap ton of UV light pretty much year round. The more you disconnect from that, the more your immune system will respond poorly, the more your red blood cells will respond poorly, and so on. So that's actually the correct answer to the question. Is it varies on the person, but I gave some pretty good anecdotes of about how much time it's going to require depending on your skin type and how much skin is involved, right? Ideally, if it's just your torso that's involved, like your stomach and your arms and your face, that's enough skin to really cause a significant impact for the timelines that I kind of gave out.
So let me tell me if this is correct. Basically, your blood test can slowly, marginally predict how healthy you might be in the spring if you know what you're looking at. And then changing your lifestyle habits should start with getting fitter throughout the winter. So when spring comes and something does happen, you have more energy to recover and overcome these things. And instead of dragging yourself out of these things that we often hear, hey, take this supplement for that, take this supplement for this, try to understand that your lifestyle choices might be the ones that are missing key to actually keep you healthy. And then maybe in some extreme cases, you do need a supplement, but try to get to the point where you take as little as possible and be at your best. And when the summer comes, make sure you really use and abuse that time to prepare for next winter to come.
That's correct. That last little bit is incredibly crucial because these are compounding in effect, right? The thing about taking a supplement is the moment you stop taking it, you stop getting the effect, right? What I'm talking about is let's get your body, because your body has built-in mechanisms. It has built-in ways to store sex hormones. That's sex-binding globulin. Has built-in ways to store vitamin D. That's why you can get your vitamin D level up in the 90s, and then it slowly diminishes through the winter. That it has ways to preserve immune function through the winter when you're not getting sun. Like most people would think, well, what happens every winter? I'm going to have to do this all over. I'm like, well, no, if you take the time to really abuse the sunlight, right? That's a great way to put it. You want to abuse the sunlight. You want to get to the point where you are abusing the sunlight, not the other way around. The sunlight's not abusing you, you're abusing it, right? You want to get to the point where you get to that point. And that's, 3-4 months out of the year where you can cultivate a whole lot of these things. And then your body has mechanisms in place to store them correctly so that when the sun starts to go away in the fall, you have a perfectly running immune system the next winter. And then you make it through the winter and you start the whole process over, but hopefully from a higher step, right? Your immune system never actually fell down to below average. It stayed above average because you took the time to abuse the sunlight and get all the correct constituents into the body when the sun was out.
Awesome, David. This has been really insightful. So thank you for your time as usual. And I'll see you in the next video.
Awesome.